Now, a question that many people have when it comes to their meditation and their spiritual practice is, how does one stay centered throughout the day? Meaning, they'll practice these techniques, any technique really that works well, but specifically these Kriya Pranayama techniques, and they'll experience clarity and they'll experience peace, and yet they go back into their life and their personality comes back, or their quirks and idiosyncrasies and their little crankiness comes back, or whatever it might be. And they ask, well, how do I stay centered in the self throughout the rest of my day? And there's a few things we have to be aware of here. Number one is that, remember in the previous video we discussed that just like spirit is to nature, gold is to a bracelet. So one of the fallacies that we have that gets away in a lot of our peace and our contentment is this idea that you, who you are, is wrong. Essentially, that's it. You have an idea of what it means to be spiritual. You have an idea of what it means to be holy. And you don't want to admit that you're part of this whole infinite consciousness too, and that your little quirks and idiosyncrasies and personality are part of the role to be played in this world. So yes, maybe you want to endeavor to be the best person you can be. Sure, nothing wrong with that. But if you happen to get depressed sometimes, or anxious sometimes, or angry sometimes, or sad sometimes, there's nothing wrong with that. That's normal. That's part of being alive. That's just a movement in this aspect of nature, which is like a solidified part of consciousness, just like spirit is to nature as gold is to a bracelet. So as you're going through your day, you want to get out of your head that there's something wrong with you. I mean, that's a lot of the reasons why people go to spirituality anyway, because again, they have this idea that something is wrong and they need to become something better. And that's the trick of spiritual teachers from ages and ages and ages. You know, how do they make their money? They say, oh, there's something wrong with you, and I happen to have the thing that will make you better. And you buy it, and you think to yourself, yes, there's obviously something wrong with me. And if I'll become better if I can sit in meditation and circulate life force through my spine, or if I can just be the most pious person possible, then I'll be better. Then everything will work out just great. Well, no. You want to stop buying this idea that you need to become better. If you want to become something else, well, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But it's not better. Nothing is better. Otherwise, essentially what you're saying is that this person is better than that person. That this person is more worthy and deserving of something, whatever it might be, than the other person. And that's creating separation and divisiveness. And if we pay attention, many of the actual philosophical teachings illustrate that we are all part of this one thing. We are all equal. You know, even one teacher said, that which you do unto the least of my brethren, you do unto me. Essentially stressing that we are all one, we are all equal, and we have to learn to see that. One is not better than the other. So first, scratch that out of your head. You do not know why you are the way you are. Your little mind can't understand that. Your personality, your activity is situated such for a reason. The reason is beyond you, but it fits into this grand scheme of things. So you have to be yourself. We'll get to that on another video. But going back to this other idea, maybe you want to be something different. Maybe you want to not be angry anymore. Maybe you want to not be depressed anymore. Well, spirituality isn't going to get rid of those things. Spirituality is going to reveal to you what you are, the infinite you. If you want to not be angry anymore, you have to figure out what's making you angry. You have to maybe get counseling to help you deal with your anger issues. If you want to not be depressed anymore, you have to figure out why you are depressed and deal with that. Depression, anxiety, anger, frustration, those are worldly things. Worldly things have to be dealt with in a worldly fashion. Okay. It may be that using this idea of spirit is to nature as gold is to a bracelet, maybe when you have that aha moment, that realization, you realize I don't need to be angry anymore because this frustration I have from other people is just a projection, and then it dissipates. So you will get benefit by exploring your spirituality. But remember, that's just a side influence. That's not why you're doing it. If you want to change the you, the physical you, the personality, the image you have of yourself, figure out how to change it. All right, take care of it at the actual problem. Don't circumvent or don't look to something to fix it that has nothing to do with it. So remember, people down the ages have made a lot of money by saying there's something wrong with you. You've got too much karma. You're a wicked person. You've got too much sin. You need to go do these prayers. You need to go do this. You need to give me money. You need to let me guide you and be your chaperone, and everything will be all right. And while you're at it, put some money in the donation box. So that's just the nature of life. The nature of human nature, I guess. But that's not going to change the issue. So we have to deal with the issues at their root, not try to think that something else that has nothing to do with it is going to change it. Our contemplations, our meditations are about realization. What am I? What is this wholeness of life? That's what that is about. So in your daily practice, after you go to work or after you interact with your spouse or after you meditate and you're back in normal life consciousness, how do you stay focused and clear? How do you stay anchored within the self? You remain observing, acknowledging that all of this is you. That all of this is a reflection of the infinite consciousness. You are just one little viewpoint, and that's a viewpoint, and that's a viewpoint. And to make all this work, we have to imagine our viewpoints are separate. How can you make peace with that? You have to figure that out. I can't tell you. But by contemplating it, by wondering, by not having that separation of me and the other, by not saying, "Oh, I'm angry, this is wrong, I shouldn't be this way," by asking yourself, how can I acknowledge that this manifestation of anger or love or joy or whatever it might be, it's easier to think love or joy as being a manifestation of infinite consciousness because that feels good. So you see, there we go again. We're picking something and saying that is good, that is better. We're taking something else and saying that is wrong, that is bad, get away from that. And again, this is why we perpetuate the issue of being led falsely when we need to be paying attention to ourselves, which is what? Everything. So again, when you're interacting with your day, you use your meditation as training to get that calm clarity. And then when you come up to an experience, when you're actually moving around, working, acting, you ask yourself internally, how can I see this in that clarity? How can I be this? How can I just let consciousness be what it is and realize that just like a bracelet is to gold as nature is to spirit, joy arises. It's easy to say that is infinite divine consciousness because it is bliss. Pain arises. You don't like it. But we have to remember, everything is God, everything is divine consciousness. So what if when it arises, we simply acknowledge it for what it is, and we let go of our judgment, our attachment to wanting to hold on to something or get away from something? This is where the rubber meets the road when it comes to your spirituality. This is why many people don't make much progress, because you have to get in there and get dirty and make mistakes and try your best until you have the direct experience knowledge of the philosophy in real life actually happening. And then you won't ask questions like, how do I carry my meditational peace into real life? Because you'll realize that that peace that you experience in meditation underlays every experience you have. And then you won't get bent out of shape when something goes wrong. And you won't get overly elated when something goes well, because you'll see it as a manifestation of one whole thing. And then you experience a bliss or a joy which is not a human emotion. That's what most people think. It is beyond the mind, and it is a realization of what has always been. In the same way that when a person's dreaming, that everything that arises in that dream is a projection or reflection and manifestation of the dreamer, right? There's no one else in your head when you're dreaming. There's not a couch, somewhere in your brain that when you go to sleep, you can see that couch when you're dreaming. You dream, and these things come up, manifest. They seem to be there, so real. But those things in the dream are no different than the dreamer. And when you can start to see that, realize that, even in your waking state, well, then you start to have a direct realization, a direct experience of what it means to stay centered in the self. To really stay centered in the self. Not the fantasy that everyone's fed you, that if you're centered in the self, that you're oblivious to everything, and that angels are singing around you all the time. It's an exaggeration, of course. It's realizing that you can't ever not be centered in the self. Okay? And this is one of the reasons why I particularly enjoy the work of Ramana Maharshi. It's particularly why I wrote that book, Kriya Yoga, Vichara. Particularly why I love the book Vasishtha's Yoga. Because it really brings home this whole point, this whole idea, which when you're first beginning your spiritual path, you can't quite grasp. But remember, these Kriya techniques and any meditation technique is meant to ripen you until you are mature enough to have the grand vision of what has always been true. And it's scary for the little ego, or it's scary for that limited viewpoint. But part of the process is learning to see, it's okay to let go of this limited viewpoint every now and then. Some people thrive on that. Some people freak out by it. Some people, when they have this experience, they're overwhelmed and they cry, and they can't even speak about what it's like. Others, it becomes so scary because they lose their limited self. They don't know who they are anymore. They can't accept that there's something that is unknowable. And that's really what we're getting at here. At the end of all of this, we realize that it's all mystery. And how can you make peace and live and be within the mystery? That's what it boils down to. When you can do that, when you can accept the fact that this is all mysterious, that you're not going to be able to define it, you're not going to be able to know it as your little mind thinks you should, then you're right on that edge of being able to take that leap of faith to exist in contentment and in freedom, which is what all sages and saints and yogis and mystics talk about. But they use their own words to define it. But you have to experience it for yourself. Everything that everyone else talks about is not it. It's just how they're doing their best to verbalize it. But you have to make the leap. You have to prepare yourself. You have to grow into this capacity. And then it becomes a very natural thing. And you can be who you are, whatever you are. You can be a foul-mouthed pirate. You can be the saint with the orange robes. You can be the clerk at the bank. You can be anything, right? And that's it. So keep this in mind, that when it comes to staying centered in the self, you need to ask yourself, what are your concepts about what it means to stay centered in the self? And realize that you have to get through those concepts. And then you have to work out, all right, I'm now at work. What do I need to do to see that spirit is to nature as gold is to a bracelet? What do I need to do to let go of these concepts, that this is spiritual and this is not? And when you can figure that out, then you experience a great weight being released. And then you're able to move through all the changes and transformations in your temporal experience, knowing what you are always as the dreamer. And then from there, the rest happens naturally. So consider this when you have ideas about what does it mean to stay centered in the self.